Hi, everyone. Welcome to Google's Journalism Emergency Relief Fund India Town Hall. Today we have Rohan Tiwari, who leads GNI for APAC region, and Irene Liu, who is leading News Lab for APAC region in this call. I am Shreya. I'm a strategic partner manager with Google, and I manage the news portfolio in India. So today we will start with a presentation about the Journalism Emergency Relief Fund, and post that we will have a question and answer session. Please feel free to put in your questions in the live chat section also. If you, as we go through the presentation, if some questions come up to your mind, just add into the comments so that we can take it up. Otherwise, we'll have a live question answer session. So we'll start off. Irene, all yours.
Thanks so much, Shreya. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I just wanted to quickly talk to you guys about the Journalism Emergency Relief Fund. This is an initiative of the Google News Initiative, which was launched in 2018 as Google's way of supporting news organizations from around the world. And this includes both reporters and editors, as well as the business side of news, which we all know is undergoing a significant transition at the moment. So obviously, COVID-19 has really affected every aspect of life. As you can probably see from our town hall, we are all dialing in from our homes respectively. But of course, it's also a time when journalism is more important than ever. People need to know what is going on. Life is changing basically minute by minute, whether you're talking about healthcare reporting or the COVID-19's effect on the business and economy and otherwise. And so in order to support the production of original journalism for local communities in the face of this COVID-19 pandemic, Google has launched the Journalism Emergency Relief Fund. It is a global fund, and its mission is to just provide an easily accessible route to financial assistance at this critical time. It is open to news organizations all around the world, and especially also in the Asia Pacific region. One thing I want to flag up front and early is that the application window closes on the 30th of April at 3 p.m. Singapore time. So please, please be aware of this. This is a hard deadline. We will not accept anything after this deadline, subject to us changing the deadline. But the deadline is what it is. So please do file your application as soon as possible. If you're wondering, these are the geographies where we are receiving applications. If for some reason you are dialing in from someplace outside of Asia Pacific, please do refer to the Journalism Emergency Relief Fund website, as it will tell you what other geographies are eligible as well. So speaking of eligibility, who is this program for? It is really targeted at small and medium-sized news organizations, which are producing original news content. So doing its own reporting, specifically targeted to local communities. So these are organizations that are focused on providing general news coverage, what's going on in your community, healthcare reporting, what's happening to businesses in your town or neighborhood, all of that kind of coverage. We do insist that in order to be eligible for this fund, your organization must have a digital presence that's been in operation for at least 12 months. So if you are a newspaper or a TV broadcaster or a local radio station, so long as you have your own branded website on that is displaying news, and it's been in operation for at least 1 year, you are eligible to apply. In addition, you must have between 2 and 100 full-time staff journalists. So this includes reporters, editors who are perhaps editing the copy, photographers, videographers, anyone who is in the workflow to produce news would be counted in this number. and they must be full-time staff employees. So if you are an organization that only funds and only provides support to freelancers, then it would not be, this fund would not be for you. But if you are employing full-time staff journalists, then you can apply. Now, you'll understand that the band is between 2 and 100. We do have the discretion to evaluate applications for newsrooms that have more than 100 full-time staff employees. So we do still encourage you to apply, and we will consider it on a case-by-case basis. And also, both nonprofit and for-profit news organizations are eligible for this fund. And it can be, like I mentioned before, newspapers, digital natives, radio and or TV broadcasters, so long as you fulfill the other criteria above. Who is not eligible? Individuals are not eligible, and government-owned entities are also not eligible to apply. In addition, non-news providers, so content providers that are not providing daily, ongoing general news, will not be eligible. So if you are a lifestyle magazine or sports news website, or you're focused on business to business, if most of your content is in one of these categories and not in news, then you would not be eligible. If, however, you are a news website that does include both general news as well as lifestyle, sports, and business coverage, then you would be eligible to apply. News providers that do not have a digital presence are not eligible, so you must have a website. And also, newly incorporated businesses that are less than a year old are also not eligible. So what's the process? It is actually a very short and relatively painless process. We really, really recommend that you do it as soon as possible. You just go to our website, goo.gle/jerfund, and apply online. We do have a lot of guidance on how to apply and what information is needed. Applications will be handled as soon as possible on a rolling basis. So basically, as applications come in, we are already starting to evaluate them. So that's why we really encourage people to apply as soon as possible, because journalists love a deadline, and so we expect that we will get a huge crush of applications at the end. This will mean that it will take more time for your application to be evaluated. So really encourage you. It should take no less than 1 hour to apply. Please, please prioritize it. Do it today. And we will notify you of success via email. What information is required for the application? It is, as I mentioned repeatedly, simple and quick to complete. Basically, you need to provide your company or information, including the date that you were founded. You have to provide the location of your news organization, where you are physically based. You must provide a website URL of your publication. And you need to tell us briefly about how the work you do is assisting communities in crisis. Now we know that COVID-19 is not just about healthcare reporting anymore. It's also about how this is affecting businesses, how it's affecting your communities and services such as schools and also public services. So, but just please be specific. Explain how your coverage is supporting your communities in crisis. The application is basically online. We do encourage you to download a PDF of the questions which is available on the application page. If you download all the questions, then you can actually see what you need to answer. And from there, I always recommend, so that you don't kind of put things in and then lose your work, put all your answers in a separate doc. And then when you're ready to actually submit, put everything into the online form and then just submit. So how does the funding work? Funds will be dispersed in a one-time payment as quickly as possible. And please note that there are a number of steps. Once you are notified that your application has been successful, you will still need to sign an agreement. You will need to provide financial information like banking information so that we can actually get the funds to you. It is important to note that the funding is in US dollars for the APAC region, which means that if you are successful, you will need to ensure that your bank can actually receive US dollars, which is very, very important. In terms of how much funding is available, funding amounts will range from the low thousands of US dollars for small hyperlocal newsrooms to the low tens of thousands of dollars for larger newsrooms. And the funding amounts do vary based on regional differences. So a few tips for applicants as you're thinking about this application process. First and foremost, read the terms and conditions and the frequently asked questions carefully. Both of these are available on the Journalism Emergency Relief Fund website. Make sure you download the application form ahead to ensure that you are able to complete it easily and completely. Make sure in that short answer section that you really clearly describe how you are serving your community during this time in crisis, and check in with your colleagues and make sure that there's only one application per newsroom, because we will only be evaluating one application per newsroom. And most importantly, do it today. The closing date is the 30th of April, but in order to beat the queue and get ahead, please definitely apply sooner so that your application will be evaluated. A few notes. No funding is available for non-news providers. Individuals are not eligible for this application or for this fund, and government organizations are also not eligible. If you have any questions, we have a global team that is ready to answer any and all your questions. You can just email jerfund@google.com, and someone will get back to you with your answers. This is particularly helpful if you have specific questions about your own individual organization's circumstances. If it's a more general question, I can almost guarantee you that your question is answered in the terms and conditions and the frequently asked questions on our website. And all that information is available at goo.gle/jerfund. And with that, we're happy to take any and all questions that you have. So give a minute to people.
So please do write in your questions in the live chat or so that we can answer them.
Absolutely. Definitely any questions that you have, like I said, feel free. If you're asking or you have this question burning, you probably, many others probably do as well. So please do ask any questions that you have.
Well, while they're sending their questions, I had a few questions, Irene and Rohan. Maybe I can ask them to you guys right now.
Sure.
So we have been running quite a few programs through Google News Initiative, right? Like the Innovation Challenge and many other funds that we have been doing. So I had a query if a news partner is already part of any of the GNI-led initiatives earlier. Are they eligible for this fund? Rohan?
Yeah, sure. Happy to take this one. Yeah, absolutely. The answer is yes. I think all the programs under GNI, be it Innovation Lab or various labs that we run or one-on-one partner programs, these are all programs on their own merit. And being a part of one does not exclude you from being part of the other. So everyone who is a part of GNI programs already can again apply for the relief fund. Yeah.
Shreya, you're on mute.
Yeah. Thanks, Rohan. So we have a few questions live. So Kamal Mahajan is asking, is there any language preference for news websites to apply for this fund?
So that's a great question. To be clear, the application must be filed in English, but we do not have a preference for what language your news website is producing content. So if you are producing content in Malayalam or Hindi or any language, that is eligible. We are not evaluating based on your based on your news website's language. However, you must please do. We ask you to please submit your application in English.
Thanks, Irene. Okay, so the next question is from Murali Krishnan. He's asking approximately when will the first set of selections be announced?
Yeah, I can take that one. Yeah, so I think as, thanks for the question. I think as Irene alluded, it's a rolling application process. So while she did stress on the last date, my humble request to everyone is please apply once you're ready. We are following a strategy where we're trying to notify applicants on a rolling basis as well in terms of application received. However, there's a bunch of communications that will go. One is, of course, once you qualify for the fund, there will be a communication back to you, which will be fast followed by the requirements of a contract. And post that is when you would have the final confirmation on the amount as well as the agreement on the fund. This entire process, we are trying to do it in the process where in the first 20 days, we are able to get back to publishers with the first form of communication. And then finally, to when the final payment happens is a question of contract, whether you're registered as a vendor for the Google Finance to make the payment, etc. Yeah.
Thanks, Rohan. The next question is from Anne-Marie. What would be the minimum time to process the application? So I think you answered that question right now. Shudipto is asking, does fact check of news qualify as news for this applying to this fund?
So the short answer is if you fulfill the other requirements, then fact checking can be considered as newsworthy. We should note that you do have to fill out how your work is serving your community during this time of COVID-19. So, for example, a website that fact checks politician statements, broadly, may not actually, if it's more of a focus on kind of like, things that are not related to community news in this moment of the COVID-19 pandemic, then it may be less relevant. But if you were doing fact checking specifically related to COVID-19, or, we all know there's a lot of misinformation going around because people are just trying to understand what's going on and it's changing day by day, that can definitely be considered. So, but you need to also make sure that you fulfill the other eligibility requirements, particularly the number of staff full-time journalists, as well as how long you've been in operation and the other eligibility requirements that you can find on the website.
Thanks, Irene. Next question is again from Murali Krishnan. He wants to know how many news organizations will be selected from the regional languages for this fund.
Yeah, I can take this one. I don't think that's the lens that we are using. What we are looking to empower and to enable is local news. And local news defined as organizations that are small and mid-sized organizations that are invested in the production of news for local communities. Now, here local could be a primary focus, both in terms of the news that you're producing for the community. It could also be a small geographical area or target community. So yeah, I mean, basically there is no cap or no selection parameter, which is regional versus English versus anything like that.
Yeah. And just to add on to that,
yeah.
Oh, sorry, Shreya, go ahead.
No. Yeah.
I was just going to say, to add on to that, I mean, each application is evaluated on its own merits for its own qualifications. This is not a competition. So, not only do we encourage you to apply as soon as possible for your own titles, please also share the information, because again, this is not a competition. We are evaluating each application on their own merits. So would definitely encourage you to apply and then tell your friends as well, so that they're behind you in the queue.
Yeah, just to add on, we would try to accommodate as many applications as possible, as long as they fall under the terms and conditions and meets the terms and conditions that are set out. So again, it's not a competition. So please do apply, as Irene and Rohan and we are, suggesting. Okay, so Kamal has another question. We have multiple news websites. Do we file multiple applications for each site?
Yeah, I can take this one. So at one end, yes, we are encouraging multiple applications from different publications or different titles within the same publishing group. So it is eligible. However, please note that we are trying to make sure that this fund can be widely disbursed as to all qualifying applicants. So would we reserve the right to try and put a cap later depending on the number of applications? Yes, we would reserve that right, but short answer, yes, multiple applications for each site makes sense. Yeah.
So just to be clear, if it's one organization, if it's one newspaper, one news site, make sure your colleagues are not also applying. Coordinate within your newsroom to make sure that you send one application. But if your if your company has more than one newspaper or more than one news website, then each news website or newspaper or TV station can apply for the fund on their own as well, with the caveat that we will evaluate and make sure that, in order to be as fair as possible and reach as many different news companies, that we will potentially take that into account later on.
Thanks. Next question from Sunil. Are you considering the reach of, say, circulation views as a factor for the fund?
So, hey, Sunil, how are you? In fact, actually, the reach is not going to be a consideration for how much you receive. The way that funding is dispersed is based on the size of the newsroom and how many full-time staff journalists that you have on staff. We will be looking at the kind of your area of coverage. So for example, are you covering a specific community? We do want to emphasize and support original news reporting that's supporting local communities and community news. So we do take that into account. But in terms of how much you get, it's more about your newsroom size as opposed to that compared with like how many people you're reaching. A small newspaper that's really serving, a small village very, very well. We want to support that as much as we want to support larger newspapers. So definitely, please, whether you're hyperlocal or whether you're a larger newspaper or other, news publication, definitely please apply.
Thanks, Irene. So Utsa has a question. Is there a turnaround time once the application is submitted? So I think Rohan had just replied to that. So we'll go to the next question.
But if I can just jump in on that one, Shreya, as well, is just to say, the longer you wait to apply, the longer it will take for us to get back to you, because it's a queue. Whoever applies first, we're going to look at their application. So really, definitely encourage you to apply sooner rather than later.
All right. So basically, for application evaluation, it's first come, first serve. So whoever comes first, that application gets evaluated first, right? So that's how it's rolling around.
Correct.
Hope that helps, Utsa. So Kamal has another question, actually related to the last answer that you gave. A range of 2 to 100 FTE journalists should be the digital operation only, or it can be total working across digital, print, and TV, as in their case. So is it only digital only FTEs that you are looking at? The bracket of 2 to 100 FTEs, is it only digital only, or does it also include print and TV or any other medium of that organization?
Yeah, I can answer that, and Irene, if you want to further add to it. No, I think we are looking at overall journalism, journalistic staff. It's not digital only. So this includes for a specific title or publication, what is your overall journalist staff? That's how we are looking at between 2 to 100.
And just to be clear, this is the people who are doing the journalism. So, you may have office managers who are, kind of helping to run the administration side, or you have payroll people, or, HR officials, or people who are on the sales side. You do not need to count those in the size of the newsroom. It's just the journalists who are working to produce the news.
Thanks, Irene and Rohan. So Utsa has another question. On what basis is the funding dispersed? They are a 3-year-old digital paper with about 80 odd journalists, and do a lot of work on local and hyperlocal news. So are they eligible for this fund?
So basically, the criteria is based on the size of your newsroom, and also, how well you can articulate what you're doing to serve your communities at this moment. So, as we mentioned before, the funding will be determined. The amount of funding will be determined by how large your newsroom is, how large the company is. But in terms of, the qualifications, they're very clearly set out. So if you meet the requirements in terms of newsroom size and the kind of reporting that you do, in terms of time open and operation, then you should definitely apply.
Thanks. Next question, it's more of a comment. So Sunil is saying medium and large organizations are also keen to apply. So I'm assuming the question is whether they can apply for this fund or not. So you can talk about that a bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much for all of you for asking these questions. I think one of the principles in which we've built out this entire fund is it's to enable local news journalists who are employed in the in creating as well as dispersing local news, and smaller and medium journalist houses pretty much directly fit into this. There are a lot of large organizations where some other programs of GNI or Google are also assisting them in terms of the ad manager relief fee that you may have seen recently. So while if you're focused on local journalism, you are welcome to apply. But I would strongly urge that, hey, there are a lot of programs that you might want to evaluate or are already being considered for. So our sole focus is to make sure that we can disburse the funds across a wider set of community to try and be fair to the entire industry.
And as I mentioned in the presentation, if you have 110, 120 people in your newsroom, we do have the ability to evaluate those on a case-by-case basis. So, don't let, if you have, if you're 5 people over the 100 limit, don't let that stop you from applying. Definitely please apply, and we will, as we mentioned, evaluate it on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, so just to add on to that, the idea would be to really go through the FAQs and the terms and conditions to understand it better. And as Irene is saying, that if you just go a little bit over, please do apply so that we can look at it and take an informed decision about it. All right. Murali Krishnan has another question. Do you consider revenue as a criteria for dispersing funds through this?
No, I think Irene had covered other parameters like reach and things like that. Revenue is not a criteria. We are singularly focused on the ability to produce and serve local news. So that's the only criteria that one should have.
Thanks, Rohan. Kamal has another question. What would be the KPIs be for evaluation of the project post-funding?
So, in fact, this is not actually, you're not applying, it's not like a reporting grant where you're applying for to fund a specific project. This is really meant to be an easy way to quickly get resources to news organizations that are already doing the work that is so badly needed by communities, right, to cover this COVID-19 situation. And so, we're not going to ask you to send us clips of the stories that you wrote or anything like that. However, we will be in touch to ask for you to help describe what you did with the funding, and also, how it supported the work that you're doing. Rohan, I don't know if you want to add more to that.
No, exactly. I think I think there are two stages of this, Kamal. So once you do apply, I think once we get into the discussion of a statement of work or a contracting, we would like to know what is the broad thing that you're going to be investing this amount in towards local news. And while that's just to really validate that that's where the fund is being used. Post, I think, as Irene said, it would be great to be in touch to understand whether this was useful. How did you really leverage this support, along with other support that is available across the industry. Yeah.
All right. So Sunil has a few queries to clarify further on application of the digital, branches of the media in Kerala. So he's saying in Kerala, most of the media houses have more than one edition, and most of them operate their online editions as a separate division under the same company name. If we consider 2 to 100 criteria, a greater part of media houses will be out of eligibility criteria. So I have a request to consider digital as a separate entity by considering the situation in Kerala.
So thanks, Sonal. I think the way I've understood is that so you've got various editions, which are the print editions, and then you've got a common online unit, which is probably producing content for all of these editions. Is that what your question is?
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, the organization is same, multiple print and digital. So if you club it together, as the organization is the same, so the number of FT journalists would be higher than the
Got it.
limit.
No, absolutely. I understand the nuance out here. And to Irene's point, so I mean, the 2 to 100 is a guideline. If you feel that there is a specific reason, in the case that you described, Sonal, that you potentially have a larger journalist staff because they're not only managing 1 or 2 editions, but could be managing 15 different titles. That's fine. I think feel free to apply, and we can surely evaluate on a case by case basis. So that should not be a deterrent here.
And I think that that's the key when you apply as well, is to be specific. The criteria for this is certain, and the mission of this is to support journalism that is supporting and aiding communities at this time of crisis. So the better and more articulately you explain how you are supporting your communities and how you define the communities of your audience, the better it is for us as we try to evaluate these applications.
So Sunil, put as much information as you can share in the application so that the team that is evaluating the applications have more information and they can take an informed decision regarding the application. Because there will be multiple cases, where these nuances will come up. So the idea is to share more information and how you are helping local community during this stressful time is very important. Okay, so Utsaha has another query. If we have applied for other grants, are we still eligible for GNI funds? I think Rohan has addressed this. This is a separate emergency relief fund for journalism. So it has nothing to do with other funds or programs that GNI is running. So please do go ahead and apply for it.
And I think just to add here, Shreya, so while you may have applied to other funds within GNI, even if you've applied to other grants which are outside of Google, that's not an information that we are seeking, and that is not a criteria for the relief fund. So you can apply. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Currently, these are the questions that we have live. I have I think we have covered most of the questions. I just wanted to reiterate, Irene, if you can redefine what is local news once again, so that the eligibility criteria are, more clearer to the audience. I think that would help.
Sure. I think that this concept of local news is actually one that can be a bit confusing in our region. It's a little bit clearer in places like the United States. Basically, what we're trying to focus on is supporting news organizations that have a clear community that they are trying to reach, right? So whether it is a vernacular language or whether it is a specific geographic region, or it's a specific, cut of the population, a specific community, that is what we are trying to emphasize, is supporting journalism that is helping a specific community handle and deal with the COVID-19 situation. And one thing that's really important that I want to note is that this is not just about health reporting now. Obviously, there has been a lot of news coverage about the health aspect of COVID-19. We know now that this is affecting our daily lives. This is affecting businesses and public services. All of that is relevant to how COVID-19 is affecting communities. So any reporting that you're doing about those issues, in our mind, should be covered under this program. So really, when you're writing your application, think about explaining to us, and don't make an assumption that we know what your publication does. Be very clear. Explain who you are, who you reach, the community that you're targeting, and also how your reporting is helping that community. So definitely, like that's the best way. The better you can explain those and answer those questions, the better job that we will have to be able to evaluate your application.
Okay, so there's another question. Science News 18, I have applied for Google News 8 days ago, but I haven't received any reply. So if you can, elaborate this question with, if you can put it a little elaboration on this question, because unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't think it could be the relief fund because we didn't open it.
Yeah.
How many days back? We opened it on 15th.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should. I think that question might have to do with a different product, not actually the fund. So maybe we should take that question offline. Yeah. Great. If I can just, I'm going to just quickly remind everyone of the relevant links. If you have questions that we haven't answered in this town hall or as you go through your application, definitely email jerfund@google.com and apply. Apply today. And tell your colleagues.
Yeah, do spread the news and encourage others to apply too. We look forward to all the applications from India here. So, yeah, that's about it. Thank you, Rohan. Thank you, Irene, for the town hall. Hope we have addressed most of your queries. Please do write in to the email address Irene just shared if you have further queries, and please apply as early as possible and in detail so that everybody who is evaluating understands the work that you are doing, and it becomes easier for them to evaluate and pass on the funds to you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Shreya. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.